Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show where we explore the stories behind the trends shaping our world.
And today we're diving into something really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's the enduring and, frankly, often terrifying relevance of Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film Psycho.
It really is something, isn't it? A film from over 60 years ago.
Exactly. 60 years. And yet it keeps popping up. It's cited, it's referenced, people watch it almost religiously,
Yeah.
especially when new horror films come out.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's always there, but we've seen this big surge recently, haven't we, in 2025?
We have. It's interesting. You've got contemporary filmmakers, even people making like indie streaming horror, still pointing to Psycho as the moment, the big inspiration.
And not just filmmakers. We're seeing its scenes replicated almost, but using totally new tech, like AI generating recreations that are all over TikTok and YouTube. It's kind of wild.
It is wild. And I think the reason it refuses to age really is because its innovations weren't about the technology of the time. They were about psychology.
Okay, so that's what we want to unpack today, right? How Psycho didn't just nudge a genre along.
No, it fundamentally changed things. We're talking like three key areas: how movies tell stories, what horror cinema even is, and crucially, the whole landscape of film censorship, especially in the U.S.
Right. And just to give you, the listener, some grounding here, the film, directed by the master Alfred Hitchcock himself, stars Anthony Perkins' Unforgettable as Norman Bates and Janet Leigh as Marion Crane.
And importantly, it's based on Robert Bloch's 1959 novel, which itself drew inspiration from a really chilling true story.
Ed Gein.
Ed Gein, yeah. The Wisconsin Killer. That real-life horror kind of underpins everything the film does. It sets this incredibly dark stage.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where do we start? The production itself.
I think we have to start there, because making Psycho was in itself a radical act. By 1960, Hitchcock was the big name, the master of suspense. He could command huge budgets, color film, the works.
But he didn't for Psycho. He went small.
Deliberately small, almost like an underground project. Low budget, which was a choice.
I read about the financing and the crew, too. That seemed really telling. He didn't use his usual A-list studio team.
Not at all, no. He actually financed it himself through his own company, Shamley Productions. He didn't want studio suits meddling with the scandalous material.
Scandalous for 1960, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. And get this. Instead of his feature film crew, he used the crew from his TV show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Why? Just for speed.
Speed, cost, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I think, secrecy and control. He wanted absolute control over this thing. No leaks, no interference.
And that whole strategy, that low-budget, high-control approach, it feeds right into the look and feel of the film, doesn't it? The black and white choice.
Massively. Choosing black and white in 1960, when color was pretty standard for big movies, was a huge statement. Almost looked backward, in a way.
So why do it? Was it purely the budget?
Budget was part of it, sure. Black and white was cheaper. And strategically, it helped with the gore problem.
The censors.
Exactly. He knew he'd have battles over the violence. And black and white makes blood look less red.
Yeah.
Less shocking, visually. But thematically, it was key, too.
How so?
It gives the film this stark, almost newsreel quality. Gritty, grim. It adds to that feeling of claustrophobia, isolation. Makes everything feel colder, more exposed, more vulnerable.
Okay, that makes sense. That stark, vulnerable feeling that sets the stage perfectly for what has to be the boldest move in the whole film, maybe in film history.
You mean Marion Crane?
Killing Marion Crane. Our supposed protagonist. That's the first big rule he breaks, isn't it? Defying narrative gravity, as some put it.
It's the absolute core innovation of Psycho, I think. Hitchcock knew there's this unspoken agreement between a filmmaker and the audience, right?
Yeah, you introduce a main character, you follow their story.
You expect them to make it through, at least most of the way.
Yeah.
Janet Leigh was a huge star. We, the audience, are invested in Marion. We know why she stole the money. We're with her on the run. She is, by all normal movie logic, our hero for this story.
And then, bang, 40-odd minutes in, she's just gone. Violently, unexpectedly.
It's not just a plot twist. It feels like he ripped up the rule book right in front of you.
Right.
How does that moment change things for the audience watching the rest of the film?
Well, it leaves you completely adrift, doesn't it?
Totally. It creates this instant, profound sense of vulnerability. If the star, the person you thought was safe, can be brutally murdered halfway through, well, then nobody's safe.
Right. The usual safety net you feel watching a movie. Gone.
Shredded.
Yeah.
Completely. So for the next hour or so, you, the viewer, are genuinely tense.
Yeah.
You have no idea where this story is going because the basic rules of storytelling, as you understood them, just went out the window.
You're not just watching anymore, you're kind of implicated, trapped in this situation where anything could happen.
Exactly. And that forces this immediate, massive pivot in the narrative itself.
The stolen money. Suddenly it doesn't matter at all.
Becomes totally irrelevant. It literally sinks with Marion in the swamp. It's like this physical symbol of the plot we thought we were watching, just disappearing. The film shifts on a dime.
From what felt like a crime thriller.
Yeah, a kind of standard woman-on-the-run story into something much, much darker. A psychological horror story focused entirely on this quiet, awkward motel owner, Norman Bates.
And that switch from the external crime to the internal, the
Yeah.
psychological, that's the next huge impact, right? This is where Psycho essentially births a new kind of horror.
It really is a dividing line. Before Psycho, horror was mostly, Gothic castle, supernatural monsters.
Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, werewolves, that kind of thing.
Right, external threats, things from over there. Psycho brought the monster much closer to home. Right into the motel shower stall, in fact. Made the ordinary terrifying.
The monster wasn't a creature, it was the guy next door.
Pretty much. The quiet, seemingly harmless guy running the motel down the road. That shift to internal psychological terror, rooted in a recognizable everyday setting that redefined horror.
That feels incredibly modern, actually. That idea that danger isn't out there in the shadows, but potentially right here, inside someone seemingly normal?
It is terrifyingly modern.
Yeah.
But the terror, importantly, wasn't built on buckets of blood. It was built on technique. Pure cinematic technique.
And the absolute pinnacle of that technique has to be the shower scene.
Oh, absolutely. The
That's
shower
right.
scene is just, it's a masterclass in manipulation. Hitchcock had the censors breathing down his neck, so he couldn't show explicit violence.
Right, the nudity, the stabbing.
He couldn't show the knife penetrating skin, couldn't show full nudity. So instead, he makes you feel the violence. He assaults your senses.
How did he do it? What are the actual techniques?
It's all about the editing, primarily. That sequence is only about 45 seconds long on screen.
Feels longer.
It does, because it took a week to film and involved something like 77 different camera setups, resulting in incredibly rapid cuts.
77 cuts in 45 seconds.
Wow. Yeah. It's this barrage of images, a flash of a hand, the curtain, the knife coming down, but you never actually see it connect. Shadows, water, Marion's screaming face. It's fragmented, chaotic.
So your brain is doing the work, piecing together the horror from these glimpses.
Exactly. It's intellectual violence, in a way. The real horror happens in your head as you desperately try to make sense of these rapid-fire images. It's implied, suggested.
And the sound design too, right? That
Oh,
music.
Bernard Herrmann's score. Those screeching, stabbing strings apparently mimicking bird shrieks. It's iconic for a reason.
Yeah.
Instantly unsettling. It sounds like violence.
Here they didn't even use a real knife sound.
That's right. The sound of the knife hitting flesh. That was Herrmann stabbing a cassava melon.
Melon, brilliant.
Created this wet, visceral, horrible sound. So yeah, minimal gore, maximum impact through editing and sound. It relies on your imagination, which is always scarier than anything you can explicitly show. That's why it still works.
So the technique keeps the horror psychological, internal. But focusing internally like that, it must have really pushed boundaries around discussing mental illness back in 1960.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And that brings us straight to Norman Bates himself and the psychological framework of the film. There are pretty clear nods to Freudian ideas here.
Okay, let's unpack Norman. Because he's not just a killer. He's a fascinating, tragic figure in some ways. His whole mother personality. It's this exploration of a fractured mind.
A classic cinematic take on the duality of human nature, yeah. And on some pretty complex psychological issues.
For listeners maybe not up on their Freud 101, can we quickly touch on those key ideas, like the id and the superego? How do they play out in Norman?
Sure. So very basically, think of the id as your raw primal drives, your basic instincts for, pleasure, aggression, immediate gratification. Norman, the shy young man, clearly has these desires for connection, maybe a relationship, independence from his mother.
But he can't act on them.
Because of the superego. That's the part of the psyche that internalizes rules, morality, parental authority. It's the repressive force. And in Norman's case, that's literally embodied by mother.
So the mother personality is his superego, run amok, controlling him, punishing him for having those normal human desires.
Exactly that. It's this terrifying internal battle. The mother persona emerges to eliminate any woman who might attract Norman, who might awaken his repressed id or threaten mother's control.
Wow, and his hobby, taxidermy.
A perfect, chilling metaphor, isn't it? He literally stuffs and preserves dead things, freezing life, keeping it under control in this unnatural state. Just like the mother personality is trying to freeze his own emotional and sexual development, the conflict becomes unbearable and it shatters his personality, leads to violence.
And this wasn't just pulled out of thin air. We mentioned Ed Gein earlier. How much did that real-life case feed into this specific psychological portrait?
Quite a bit. Bloch, who wrote the novel, and Hitchcock, they definitely drew on the Gein case specifics. Gein lived in isolation on a remote farm, was obsessed with his domineering dead mother and, well, the horrific things he did with human remains.
So the film grounded its psychological horror in something real, something documented.
Yes, it wasn't fantasy. Gein was this quiet neighbor nobody suspected him. By tapping into that reality, Psycho told the audience that the capacity for profound horror isn't out there with monsters. It's hidden inside ordinary people, in ordinary places.
That raises the stakes considerably. It's not just a scary movie, it's a deeply disturbing look at human potential.
And confronting that kind of human darkness meant the film had to push against the very rigid social and cultural norms of 1960, which brings us nicely to the censorship battles and the whole audience experience.
Right. Psycho's whole narrative, the themes, it felt like a deliberate challenge to the rules of the time, specifically the Production Code Administration, the PCA.
Oh, the PCA. Yeah, they were basically Hollywood's internal police force. Self-censorship, really. They had immense power over scripts, over final cuts. Their rules were incredibly strict about anything related to sex, violence, even things that challenged basic moral assumptions. Upholding traditional values was paramount.
This was an era where, you couldn't even show a married couple in the same bed sometime.
Pretty much. And Psycho wades right into forbidden territory, showing Marion and her lover Sam in a hotel room post-coitus, clearly unmarried. That was risque.
And I heard even showing a toilet flushing was a big deal.
Believe it or not, yes. The flushing toilet scene was seen as shocking. It breached this idea of domestic privacy, showed something considered unseemly on screen. It signaled a kind of raw naturalism the code hated.
Small potatoes compared to the main stuff, though. The premarital relationship, the psychological pathology, and of course the violence.
Exactly. The violence, the madness, the fact that Marion, our initial focus, is presented as morally compromised before she's killed. Psycho just stomped all over the code's guidelines.
And because it was a massive hit.
It basically proved the PCA wrong. It showed there was a huge audience ready for more mature, psychologically complex, challenging films. It undeniably helped weaken the code's authority, paving the way for the more daring films of the late 60s and 70s.
But challenging norms wasn't just about what was on screen, was it? It was also about how you saw it. Hitchcock's famous no late admission policy.
Ah, yes. That seems like pure marketing genius now, but it was rooted in protecting the film's structure.
Why was it so essential? Why ban latecomers?
Because, as we discussed, the entire emotional impact hinges on you experiencing Marion Crane's story from the beginning, investing in her, and then being utterly shocked by her death.
If you walked in 20 minutes late,
you'd miss the setup entirely. You wouldn't know who she was, why the money mattered. Yeah. You'd walk into a different movie, basically. Yeah. And you'd ruin the shock for everyone else already there.
Right, the disruption alone.
Exactly. Hitchcock understood the suspense, the shock, that feeling of narrative betrayal. They were fragile. This strict rule, which was unheard of, forced audiences to respect the viewing experience on his terms. It was a power move, really, controlling the experience.
And again, this ties back to that low-budget, black-and-white choice. It wasn't just about cost or censors. It enhanced that feeling of vulnerability, didn't it?
Absolutely. No big, colorful sets, no distracting spectacle, just this grim, isolated motel. The focus stays tight, claustrophobic. It emphasizes the psychological confinement.
When the monster is human and the setting is mundane, you don't need flashy effects.
The horror comes from the quiet, the shadows, the implication, and that whole approach, that methodology. It became the blueprint for a whole new subgenre.
Which leads us straight into the modern slasher film. Can we say Psycho basically invented it?
Without question. Psycho is the clear pioneer. Every film about an isolated killer, often mass stalking victims, usually young people, in some remote or confined location. It all traces back to Norman Bates and his motel.
It's more than just the setup, though. It's the themes, the DNA that got passed down.
Completely. Think about the core elements Psycho established that became slasher staples. There are three big ones, I'd say. Isolation, moral ambiguity, and identity collapse.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Isolation first. The Bates Motel.
The ultimate isolated setting, right? It's not just physical remoteness, it's psychological isolation, too. Norman's trapped by mother. The victims are trapped by the location. It creates the perfect hunting ground, ramps up the vulnerability. Think Cabin in the Woods, that's pure Psycho.
Got it. Second, moral ambiguity. You mentioned Marion wasn't exactly a saint.
Right. She's a thief, she's flawed. This introduces the idea, later picked up heavily by slashers, that maybe the victims aren't entirely innocent. Slashers often seem to punish characters for perceived moral failings, sex, drugs, whatever. Psycho started that by making its first, most prominent victim morally complex. It blurs the lines, makes you uncomfortable.
Okay. And third, identity collapse. Norman's fractured personality.
That's the big one, psychologically. Norman's internal split, the mother persona taking over. This becomes the foundation for so many later killers. The mask, the hidden trauma, the killer who isn't who they appear to be, the monster hiding behind the human face.
From Norman Bates to Michael Myers.
There's a direct line. That fractured identity, that hidden menace, Psycho codified it.
And what's really striking is that contemporary horror films made today are still borrowing directly from this playbook. You mentioned examples like Barbarian or Pearl.
Yeah, and they're not just tipping their hat. They're using the structure. Barbarian, for instance, is all about isolation in a weird, confined space, that rental house. And it immediately throws moral ambiguity at you. Who's trustworthy? Who's the real threat? It keeps you guessing, just like Hitchcock did.
And Pearl, the prequel to X.
Pure Psycho DNA. It's a deep dive into a fracturing mind in an isolated rural setting. Repression, resentment, leading to violence. The themes are right there, updated but fundamentally the same psychological territory Hitchcock mapped out in 1960.
It shows the framework is just timeless, isn't it? It's not about the tech used to make the film. It's about the psychological buttons it pushes.
Precisely. Hitchcock gave filmmakers this incredibly durable structure for exploring really deep-seated human fears. Fears about identity, control, the darkness potentially lurking inside anyone.
Which, circling back, makes that 2025 trend of AI recreating scenes even stranger.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? A film built on suggestion, shadow, rapid cuts, low tech, psychological manipulation now being fed into algorithms designed for photorealistic, explicit generation.
But the AI is still trying to capture the feeling Psycho created, right? The vulnerability, the shock.
It's borrowing the structure because the structure works. Even if the AI misses the nuance, the very act of recreating it proves its enduring power. 60-odd years later, Hitchcock's roadmap to terror still holds up. He showed us the monster was human, and that was the most terrifying thing of all.
So after all this time, why should people still watch Psycho? Why does it remain so relevant?
I think because it taps directly into our ongoing fascination with the darker side of human nature. Think about the obsession with true crime, with understanding pathology. Hitchcock was there first, cinematically speaking. He made the danger internal, psychological. He made you question the ordinary.
He showed us that the most terrifying place might be somewhere you assume is safe, a motel shower. Or maybe your own mind.
Exactly. It forced a kind of vulnerability on the audience that we still see echoed today.
And maybe that's the final thought for you, the listener, to consider. How much of the media you consume now, whether it's true crime podcasts, streaming horror series, psychological thrillers, how much of it still relies on manufacturing that same sense of vulnerability that Hitchcock perfected back in 1960? That one shocking decision to kill the star changed everything.
It really did.
Next time on Trending Unpacked, we'll shift from cinema to civics, unpacking why the phrase plenary authority is making waves in courts, politics, and online debates.